Yep. Seen that one coming. Seen that one coming. Rudeus bought a girl? New low for Rudeus. First predator, now owner of someone. Another anime that is pro forced servitude. Seen all this coming. Knew it was coming. I know. This video is going to be going full on dodging mode for the YouTube naughty words, but just bear with me here. But yes, we knew this was coming. And you know what? I'm fine with it. I have never been against people being uncomfortable with certain stories and just walking away from them. No matter the subject matter it's getting into, if you don't feel comfortable with it, walk away. I said that with Ocean of Ko with the whole situation of cyberbullying and people wanting to self-harm. Other stories of gruesome murder, horror, etc., etc. And yes, even the first season of Mushoku Tensei, when everybody was uncomfortable with Rudeus being pervy, I was fine with it. Just walk away. If it's not for you, it's not for you. What I don't like, and something honestly I'll roll my eyes at, is the obvious attempt for some people to grandstand. Stand on a soapbox and tell everyone the obvious news. Forced servitude is wrong. Yes, we know. We know that it's supposed to be uncomfortable. That's the point. So yes, for those unaware, Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation, 2nd season, episode 6, has the controversial Rudeus goes to the market that sells people moment. Again, sorry, I'm dodging. The problem that I had with most people's outcry is that I feel like Mushoku Tensei handles forced servitude really well. I guess the problem that a lot of people have is that they don't realize that Mushoku Tensei is not one of those OP main character dashes in and saves everyone. No. It's grounded. It's not glorifying that being in it, but the world itself is, while being fantasy-based, is grounded in reality. That's what makes the impact so much more impressive. And they're not using this as sort of a single plot point. It's not just thrown in there to go, well, we need to progress the story, so let's bring in that. It's something that's constantly present in this world. And it's never painted in a great light, besides maybe Saros having a bunch of beast folk maids. To be clear, I hate forced servitude. I know I have to say that. I have to put this qualifier in here so that people know, despite the fact that I'm going to explain this, I'm against it. It hurts to know that it exists. And it makes me cry knowing that it still exists in our world. To this day, the most prevalent existence of it is human trafficking. And the thought of it makes me sick. Absolutely sick. But with all that said, I'm not against it existing in fictitious worlds. There's 2 reasons for this. One, it reminds me that it's terrible, so that I'll always want the eradication of it in our existence. And 2, it could be used to tell a compelling and real world. Because I'm sorry, it's hard to imagine a world where horrible things don't exist. Honestly, having a writer shy away from tough subjects leaves it dry and lifeless. That's why Mushoku Tensei stands as such a great story versus all the other copy and paste isekais after it. They all lose that uncomfortableness. They all lose those blemishes and just focus on positivity, and they become lifeless. There's no conflict in the reader and the character themselves. You're not questioning the character. They just do what you want them to do. It's boring. And it's odd this is suddenly a shock for a lot of people because the Mushoku Tensei world itself is full of stains, just like our own. That's what creates its realism. There's death, murder, war, disease, corrupt royalty, and nobles. There's massacres, rape, starvation, orphans, false imprisonment, kidnapping, blackmail, mass tragedies, and yes, forced servitude. And I'm perfectly fine with a lot of people putting that on a higher scale than all the rest. But it's still to point out that all this other stuff exists. What's to shock you here? When in Millis, Rudeus gives insight into this practice. He says the world has many kidnappers, criminals always looking to snatch up children and sell them off. In the kingdom of Asura, Demon Continent, Great Forest, and even in the holy country of Millis. Geese told him that it was a very profitable line of work. With the world mostly being at peace, many wanted to buy people. Particularly richer countries like Millis and Asura had wealthy people that was always looking to purchase. Supply couldn't meet demand, so victims fetched a high price. As long as this was true, it meant the issue would never be going away. To eliminate the practice entirely, you'd have to apparently start a massive war or two. Later in the northern region, Rudeus mentions that many regions condone it. Some regions would even collapse without it, meaning they have no other resources they're producing of their own that would normally sustain a region. So they turn to human trade. It's not saying it's right, just saying this is why it exists in this world. The writer isn't throwing it in as a plot tool. This is how the economy itself functions for a lot of areas, and so it is something that exists in this world. What Rudeus is saying here is that in this world, this is a reality. It's massive, it's profitable, criminals are utilizing it to make a living, and in order to stop it, the demand would have to be removed, which means telling every noble, all the royalty, please stop, which is impossible without a massive world-scale war. Never does it say it's right, only that he observes it. While forced servitude is mentioned many times throughout the series, and I'm really only going through what is going to be covered pretty much up until the point the anime is at right now. Episode 6 of Season 2. I don't really recall there being anything after that in Season 2 that I've actually read, so don't be afraid here. Rudeus rarely reflects on his own beliefs about it. This has probably contributed to Rudeus' mindset as a whole. He rarely thinks about what he can't change, or what many would want to improve about another world. When popping into this world, he didn't immediately say, oh, time to give it air conditioning. That's not how Rudeus thinks. That's not how he's ever thought. He's a Japanese shut-in, taken to another world, seeking to start over. He's basically adapting into it, despite using his own thoughts and his own memories of his previous life. He's someone who, in his previous life, spoke out once, and became mentally and physically destroyed by upsetting the wrong people. He's not a politician or a war general. He is a weak, timid man-child, for the most part. Many people will claim that he's massively overpowered. I mean, he parted clouds. But he's more crafty than anything. He even himself admits constantly that he's a walking glass cannon. For those who don't know what that term is, it's somebody that's all built in offense, but one sneeze on their chest and they'll explode. They're made of glass, and they shoot like a cannon. One strike would kill him. He has no protections like a battle aura that most warriors have, and he doesn't have any barriers like mages would have. At least those that studied in Millis. Shoot, the one time that he does speak up, it was to the wrong person in this new world. Orsted, who left him with a hole in his chest. This is somebody that has learned several times, don't speak up. And this has affected him mentally. He constantly thinks about this. I would argue that his mindset's more of the type of, it is what it is. And that's going to frustrate some people, but he's not you. This is Rudeus. I feel the same way. He makes a lot of thought process that I'm like, please stop, dude. But I'm not him. He's not me. It exists here, and he can't change it. Instead, his focus is on just keeping his head down and not getting involved. Rudeus is not the type to want to stand out. It's only when he's forced to that he does. Good example of this is his experience with Gallus. For those who don't know or don't remember, Gallus was a man that helped Rudeus move Resurd across the sea in a smuggling group. Resurd being a demon, which is discriminated against, and also being from a very feared tribe, the Sepurds, this was their only option. Rudeus ended up helping Gallus betray his friends by releasing the captive beastfolk. Unbeknownst to him, Gallus wanted to lure out the adults so that he can capture his own children. Rudeus, who's typically pervy, is sobered up at the sight of the captive children, and even fears being killed by assassins sent by the smugglers afterwards. It's only through his desire to help Resurg's name, and Resurg's influence to help the children, that he stands up against Gallus rather than joining him. Again, a person that's very self-preservating suddenly stands up. The same desire for heroism in Resurg and Dead End drives him to be unable to justify standing by when they see somebody being kidnapped in Millis. Again, it's the fear of standing out, the fear of being killed again, but still pushing through when he's forced. Rudeus is not a hero, but every now and then he'll do good deeds. Now, while Rudeus keeps his head down in the story, there is cases of triumph over forced servitude throughout the series. After the displacement incident, we learn of Bigot Mercanal. He wasn't a free man, eventually turned captain of the Markian's mercenary company, and now fighting in the conflict zone for honor over money. Ghislaine herself mentioned that due to her lack of being able to read, she was constantly deceived and sold into forced servitude, but obviously got out of it, probably because she's really, really powerful. Now here's the biggest triumph. Paul, Rudeus' father, was found in the holy country of Millis. He was leading the Fatoa search and rescue squad. Their desire was to find anyone displaced by the displacement incident. Sadly, most of them died or were killed, and the rest pretty much left stranded. Think of being in a world where you're just transported to the other side of the world itself, and you have no mass transportation or way of contacting people. You're just stranded out in the middle of nowhere. Most end up kidnapped and taken into human trade to be sold. Paul, driven to find his family and the other victims, would often find these people in forced servitude. He worked to get them freed, bought them, freed them, arranged for travel, and gave them money to get them back home. Or if all else failed and they couldn't get the owner to agree, he'd have to snatch them up in the middle of the night. This put them under the target of so many nobles that were literally coming out and attacking them, killing his men in the streets. He was making enemies of so many groups. Because like I mentioned earlier, many people of power, nobles, rich people, they wanted these folks. They wanted to use them. But Paul never gave up, despite the fact that even his own men were blaming him for the loss of their people. He was in constant fear of seeing his own family had been sold off as well. Again, this isn't a pretty thing. Finally, during the incident with Gallus, Reserve ended up freeing 50 victims that were going to be sold off. The Zantport itself, which would have checked the cargo, was overlooking it. They were being paid off. And this nearly led to a full-scale war with the Beast Folk themselves. They weren't happy about this. Eventually, Zantport backed down and paid up a large lump sum. Now, to episode 6 of season 2. Because I know I'm hearing folks already saying, but existing is different than partaking. I know, I hear you. I'm not making any excuses. Just like when the series first started and everybody was saying that they were uncomfortable with Rudeus perving out. I don't condone it, but I'm fine with it existing in fiction if it's to tell a proper story. So let's break down what actually happened with the buying of Julie, because I think this is where a lot of people get it wrong. Or yes, I can argue that it's just because it wasn't fully adapted. They're gonna skip things with the novel adaptation to the anime. So first off, Rudeus sees that Zenoba can't create figurines, so he goes to Fitz for advice. Fitz, who spent a lot of time in the Osra Palace, yes, knows that a lot of nobility, when they didn't have the skills or ability to do things, they would often buy people and then train them to do it instead. So Rudeus mentions this to Zenoba, who actually considered the same exact thing. See, Zenoba didn't mention this, as he felt this would be disrespectful to ask his master to teach a servant. Again, to Fitz, Zenoba, this is a normal thing in this world. For Rudeus, this is something that everyone accepts, and so he doesn't push back. Again, not that he's clapping about it, just that he's like, okay, well, they feel this is the thing that needs to be done. It's completely normal to his character to keep his head down. Then they enter the market, and there's plenty of emphasis to the environment they're in. He takes note about how everybody's stripped, they're oiled up to sell. Even as they go to the back room where Julie is, he notes how everyone is crammed in the cages. So many with murderous intent in their eyes, so many just crying. The place is terribly cold back where they keep Julie. The sellers claim that she's barely hanging on. You probably don't even want to buy her. She's probably just gonna die. Julie sat there, pale-faced, hollowed eyes, freezing, skeleton body. Fitz's face screwed up just seeing them strip her down. Rudeus didn't like the sight either. He wanted to quickly buy her, run off, feed her, get her clothed, get her warm, everything. That was his initial thought. I just need to get her out of here. He didn't like what he was seeing. Again, this isn't a happy place, nor is it glorified. The hesitation that Rudeus has is in her eyes. He recognized those same eyes from his previous life. The time when he himself wanted to end his own life. A time when he felt that he had no prospects for the future. He seen Julie with no hope in her eyes. The reason he offered her death was because he regretted not ending his own and figured that she might end up like him, reincarnated into another life. The bigger point here is that he couldn't offer to fix her. Buying her, feeding her, clothing her wasn't going to save her. Unlike many other stories where the protagonist is just saving the waifu for the harem, Rudeus doesn't see himself saving her, which is completely counter to what everybody's saying right now. He wouldn't be saving her by forcing her to do something that she didn't want to do. He wasn't going to tell her the same thing that was told to him. You can do it if you put your mind to it. He wanted to leave the choice up to her, whether or not she wanted to try this new life. In the end, she wanted to live. And that decision comes at, yes, a buy. But not by Rudeus, like everybody thinks. And again, I could probably argue it's probably due to the anime and how it adapted it. No, Zenoba is the one that has the money. He's the dude with the deep pockets. Rudeus doesn't have money to buy her. Zenoba bought her. It was Zenoba who Julie is serving, and ultimately who he stays with. But Andrew, why not just destroy the entire market and save her and everybody else? This isn't that story. I'm sorry. As much as I want to agree with you, as much as I want to say, yes, Rudeus, blow them all up. I hate this whole situation. That isn't the story. Not that Rudeus doesn't, is that he literally can't. The moment he blows up that market, guess what? He is the enemy of literally not just the magic nations, but probably other nations as well. It would be a massive no-no. And again, like I said earlier, he's not immortal. He's not impervious. Yes, he can part clouds, but what is that going to do to kill somebody? This is literally somebody who is a walking glass cannon. It just takes one skilled swordsman would cut him down that quick. Rudeus isn't overpowered. He's very clever, but he's not this OP machine like most other isekais. And even if he was to defeat whoever came, the guards or whatever came to stop him, he would then have adventurers, his fellow adventurers, being sent to take him down. This is not something that Rudeus can tackle himself. He's not as overpowered as people think he is. Again, one skilled swordsman would probably take him down. He was barely standing on his own against Eris, and even then she was overtaking him, even with his demon eye. And she's not some sword king. It's not that simple. And even if he does somehow get away with it. Maybe he just, I don't know, stone pillars away or uses a disguise, puts Ponsu on his head again. What then? They're all freed. What then? They're in the middle of the northern region. It's freezing outside. They would probably die within hours just because of the cold. He has nowhere to put them. He's living in the university in the dorms. He doesn't have room for them. There's no orphanages. There's no place to put them. There's no place to, he has no money to feed them. It sadly just comes down to one of those kind of uncomfortable truths. It's aspects that it's just something you cannot change. And the knee-jerk responses that we all have is from a third-person perspective. We're just like, try it. I mean, we have nothing to lose by saying, oh, Rudeus should have tried this. Rudeus has everything to lose. He has sadly nothing to gain other than the gratification of saving people, but it's not going to change anything if he were to take them down here. There's plenty of other markets, and in the end, it's just going to end up with him killed. He can't change what is just naturally existing in this world. It's like the idea of taking down the mob boss, but then he has like 50 captains that just step up and take the place. It's a sad, uncomfortable reality. But Andrew, why not buy her and free her? I have 3 answers to that. The first is immediately freeing her onto the streets, she would freeze. She would starve, or she'd be kidnapped and put right back in the market. She has no home to go to. I would assume being that she's a dwarf, unless there's other areas around, the only place that we know of at this point in the story is way down near the Great Forest. That's where all the dwarves are at. So, I mean, how? How's she gonna get back home? And is she gonna get kidnapped on the way? Is she gonna die along the way? There's nothing here granting her freedom. And sadly, no, your Forced Servitude label doesn't just tear off and you throw it on the ground and suddenly she's free, never to become one again. That's not how it works in this world. It's simply somebody grabs you off the street and you're back in there. Answer 2. She's sort of free in theory. While Julie is classified as a servant to Zenoba, she's treated like a little sister. Zenoba names her after her dear brother that he regrets killing due to his inability to control his strength. She's given shelter, she's fed, she's taught language, knowledge. Yes, technically things that are unheard of for a servant. It's almost as if she's just a servant by title only. Then there's the third answer. Without being classified as a servant to Zenoba, she wouldn't be able to stay with him at the university. And yes, both Rudeus and Zenoba are living in the university. The dorms only permit servants, maids, and in some cases bodyguards to stay with them. Now, after he leaves the dorms, would he release her? Maybe not. I don't know yet. But again, that's not Rudeus' choice, nor do I think he's going to stand on a soapbox and start pointing his finger at Zenoba. Because as I mentioned earlier, at the end of the day, Rudeus doesn't steal people and sell them off to servitude. Nor does he, for now, buy anyone. He's simply existing in the world of stains, and he isn't the type to get involved with things that he can't, nor desires to fix. Again, sometimes stories can be uncomfortable. Sometimes things feel so real that it unsettles you, but that's not a reason for it not to exist in storytelling. Take it as a reminder, not an opportunity to grandstand. And don't get me wrong, Rudeus is a massively flawed character. That's what makes him so interesting. That's what makes the story so interesting. Shoot, his interactions with the captured beast folk way back when made me sick. But that's sort of what we signed up for at the beginning. The author even admits that. And seeing him grow from that is massively rewarding. At the end of the day, I want Rudeus to save everyone, sure. But Rudeus is not me. I don't expect him to make the choices I would make. Nor do I want to read a story where the character does everything that I would do. That would be boring. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, found it informative, just to give you an idea of the mindset of Rudeus, at least through the novel series, and yes, some of it's covered in the anime itself up until this point of the story, just to give you an idea of why doesn't he do something. And I think it is something to point out. But if you like this video, make sure to hit that like button down below, comment, let me know what you think of this whole situation. I know there's some folks going, oh my gosh, you're making too many Mushoku Tensei videos. I knew that was going to be happening when we got into Mushoku Tensei's anime coming out. I'm like, okay, I'm going to be making probably more videos around Mushoku Tensei. Honestly, people like the content. I love talking about this series. I can talk nonstop about Mushoku Tensei at this point. So if people like it, and I'm making it, and people are eating it up, I'm going to keep making it. So as long as there's something to discuss, I'm going to love talking about it. So hopefully it doesn't feel like I'm just, shooting out videos, but it feels like each of these videos has content in it. I want to make content that people enjoy, they find informative, and then they can draw their own conclusions. Maybe if after you watch this video, you're like, I still hate Rudeus. Again, perfectly fine. I'm not against people not liking things. But yes, if you are new to the channel and this is your first time seeing this stuff, make sure to hit that subscribe button before you leave so you can get all my content. I do news reviews, first impressions, top list. If it's anime, it's pretty much here. Again, my feed might show a lot of Mushoku stuff, but I do a lot of stuff. I try to at least get a video out each day that has something in it of substance, not just for the sake of getting a video out. But additionally, if you like this content and you want to support it more, I have a Patreon link, tips link, super thanks, membership button down below. I greatly appreciate it, but it supports the channel. It means so much to me, and y'all take care.